If you're in the Navy, you've likely heard the name Fat Leonard. It's the nickname for the man at the center of a long-running web of bribery and corruption that infected the officer ranks of the Navy's Pacific Fleet. Craig Whitlock is the Washington Post reporter who exposed the Fat Leonard scandal. He joins us to discuss his book, Fat Leonard: How One Man Bribed, Bilked, and Seduced the U.S. Navy, and parse through some of the greater takeaways from one of the service's largest failures this century.
Today we're joined by Craig Whitlock. He's a Washington Post investigative reporter specializing in national security, and he's the author of Fat Leonard: How One Man Bribed, Bilked, and Seduced the U.S. Navy. So you are the guy that brought Fat Leonard out of the shadow of the Navy and kind of into mainstream society and into mainstream awareness. Going back, what year did you first report your first Fat Leonard story, and how did you kind of catch wind of this scandal to begin with?
So it was way back more than a decade ago. It was in October of 2013, I wrote my first story for the Washington Post. And at the time, I had heard a report, an AP, Associated Press report out of San Diego about the arrest of a defense contractor named Leonard Glenn Francis on bribery charges. So I was just asking around and bumped into someone in the corridors of the Pentagon, a Navy contact, and I said, "Do you know anything about this Leonard Francis guy?" And this Navy officer got a big smile on his face and said, "Oh, you mean Fat Leonard? Everybody in the Navy knows about Fat Leonard."
Do you have any sense, ballpark, of how many Fat Leonard stories you filed since then?
Yeah, it's probably been about 70, 75 stories for the Washington Post. Now that's over, 11 years, and I slowed down a little bit to write my book. But I've still been publishing Fat Leonard stories. I had a piece just last month in the Post, a page one story about how the Justice Department has had to drop cases involving a number of Navy officers who had already pleaded guilty to felonies, and several of them were allowed to plead down to misdemeanors. One case was dropped entirely, even though the guy had admitted leaking military secrets and taking bribes. And this is because of prosecutorial misconduct in the whole case. So this is really this story about Fat Leonard. It's been going on for 10 years, but every time you think you've hit the bottom of it or it's come to an end, there's some new twist.
You've reported so many crucial details about this scandal over the years. Is there anything that to this day you can look back on and say, wow, uncovering that fact particularly shocked or surprised you? Any twists or turns that have been kind of the biggest shockers for you professionally as you reported all this up?
I'd known some of the people who were investigated in this case, including some senior flag officers. And by and large, these people were pretty well regarded, and a number of them held in very high esteem. He knew how to put people at ease. He knew how to make people think it was okay, that they weren't going to get caught, that this wasn't going to blow up in their face. And he really, he gained control over a lot of people in the Navy, that they were willingly giving him classified ship schedules that they knew would get them thrown in jail if they got caught. So he put people at ease in a way that made him think that he was their friend. He really pulled a con job, not just on the Navy, but as I outline in the book, he conned the Justice Department when he was cooperating with them and later escaped to Venezuela. And he conned a federal judge into thinking that he was terminally ill with cancer and that he wasn't going anywhere. And there's so many twists and turns again in this story where you think, how could anybody fall for a racket like this, somebody like Leonard Francis? But you see this, year after year, month after month, place after place, people who were much smarter and should have known better. What were they thinking? I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. But Leonard was just a very clever crook and able to gain people's confidence and leverage what advantage he had over them.